All right. Man Cave Sports back with a Timberwolves Thunder Game 3 recap here with Razor and Mr. Steve. Mr. Nunn, I believe, has a gig today. Brett is en route back home, I believe. He was in town for the game last night, where the Timberwolves won 143 to 101 in an amazing performance. Lucky to see them make a series out of this after getting drubbed pretty handedly in the first two games. We did recap game one. However, with everybody's busy weekend, it was difficult to do a game two recap. And quite frankly, uh, I have decided to throw that game in the trash and try to forget about it. But Razor, talk about last night's performance because I believe they were up 20-21 at the end of the first quarter. Anthony Edwards outscored OKC by himself in the first quarter. So just give us your take on what was probably the greatest playoff game in Timberwolves history.
The Wolves just came out like a desperate team to start the game. As you said, the first quarter was just amazing. They won that quarter 34 to 14. Anthony Edwards won that quarter by himself by scoring 16. And he, I think, set the tone with the energy, not only offensively, his going to the basket, being decisive about the three-point shots he took. But again, he was just flying around on defense. They were, I think, as a unit, they were picking up the ball earlier. I think Richard Jefferson, who was on the call, made that comment throughout the game that the pickup point for the Wolves was a lot sooner, not letting OKC kind of walk it up and then picking them up late. They picked them up a lot quicker. I thought Rudy maybe had a bit of a slow game to start, but then when he came in for his second stint, I mean that I think late in the first quarter, his energy and defensive energy was just, I mean, it was just on another level. And the Wolves were playing like they were already down 3-0. I mean, and thankfully they found this energy before things got to that level. And I mean, I think the OKC team talked about it a lot after the game that they got punched in the mouth, and now it's up to them to respond. And the Wolves showed character. They showed that they're fighters. They show that they have a lot of heart, and they did come out swinging, and they didn't let up. So it just all throughout the lineup, the contributions were coming from everywhere, from the starters, the stars, to the role players, from a rookie. I'll just leave that as a teaser right now for Mr. Steve to touch on later. But it was just from the get-go, they were on point. Had a bit of a lull, I think, to start the third quarter at halftime, but then Chris Finch called a timeout, and then they put their foot back on the pedal. So kudos to them. It was just the energy level was on another level, and then they actually hit open shots. What a big difference that makes to make some open shots. Mike.
No, no doubt. And just looking at the numbers, they shot 57% from the field, 55 out of 96, 20 of 40 from downtown. I know a lot of the concerns, especially I believe it was game one where they were 15 for 51. Um, obviously you don't want them to just settle for taking threes, but they were taking timely ones. They were hitting them all across the board. In fact, of the 14 players that played last night, everybody on the team outside of Joe Ingles, Josh Minot was the only one that didn't score a point last night for the team. So, Steve, talk a little bit about the officiating because obviously game one, everybody came out. We discussed, hey, you know, Shea's getting a favorable whistle. It's affecting the aesthetics of the play, people watching it. I thought game two with Scott Foster and Tony Brothers was well officiated. And last night, the officials were not an issue as well. So talk about the officiating in the last two games, if you could.
Yeah, I think that with last night's game, it looked more like your traditional playoff basketball, right? There was some they allowed some physicality. They called stuff that was obvious. They called stuff that should be called. But you didn't see as much of the ticky tack. Somebody breathed on somebody, and you're getting an easy whistle that way. We had 18 fouls. I think they had 20 that were called on them. Yes, they had 20 fouls. So pretty even, when you look at the numbers there. But I think the big thing is they let them play playoff basketball, a little bit more physical, which I don't think either team necessarily minds because OKC wants to play physical defense. Minnesota wants to be able to play physical as well. That's part of their brand of basketball. And I think that another thing is that Minnesota's learning to keep that offhand away from these guys. A lot of times when we get busted, it's not because of the hand that's up. It's the low hand and so I think we did a lot better job of keeping that low hand away from people as well. But I thought the officiating was good the last two games. I mean, the Scott Foster officiating can always be, a little bit hit or miss, but they let him play a little bit more playoff basketball. And I think, that's good for the game. Obviously, it's good for the Wolves because they're playing a little bit more physical. But yeah, it's a much better game to watch, and not just because of what the Wolves did, but when you're watching them play and you're letting them be a little bit more physical. Like when you watch the Pacers and the Knicks the other night, right? The big choke 2.0 game. These guys are going out, and at some point you're like, okay, is it a little bit too physical? But it's playoff basketball, right? Let them go out and play. You got world-class athletes, let them go. So yeah, I think the officiating was much better the last two games. Last night especially, it was good to see that, let these guys bang a little bit, let them get into each other a little bit without calling just ridiculous fouls. So I think it was even, right? If it's an even whistle, then fine, right? If they're going to call it super tight, but it's super tight on both sides, cool. If they're going to allow them to play physical, let them play physical on both sides.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit at the start of Ant's performance, 30 points in 30 minutes. I believe he had 9 rebounds and 6 assists. I think had he needed to play the fourth quarter, which I believe he sat out the entire quarter. I mean, he was perhaps on his way to a triple double. Had a couple of turnovers, but had a couple of nice steals that really set the tone early in the game for some breakaway dunks. Um, talk Razor, talk about SGA's performance, because obviously he had a rough game, 14 points, I believe, and I think the Timberwolves just hit him so quickly in the mouth that they never really had a chance to catch their breath the whole game. But talk about SGA last night.
I mean, he didn't get to the free throw line like he had been in previous games. Granted, he didn't play in the fourth quarter, but I think he shot 4 free throws. He didn't shoot a high percentage at all. I think you said it was he 4 of 14 overall, and the efficiency wasn't there. He went down a couple times. The huge tried to sell a few fouls, but it didn't seem like the refs were going to allow for that yesterday. And the Wolves just went at him defensively without being too physical, without reaching in, and he was, I mean, shockingly, he was largely ineffective. I mean, I do expect him to come back with a fury in the next game. I mean, you could hear there he was mic'd up for the game, and you could hear him talk a little bit, and he was explaining to somebody why they were losing, that they were I mean, just the energy level was just they just couldn't match it. And I mean, those things can be adjusted. And again, just good to see that the refs let them play, as Mr. Steve said. I do worry a little bit about Dort. He was starting to get kind of chippy. I know you asked me about SGA, but like he started slapping Rudy's hand away. He actually stopped playing on a play and started slapping his hand away. The refs just let it go, and then he ran down court and shoved Ant, I think, once or twice. No call. So they maybe allowed that part to go on for too long, just to kind of go back to the rough thing. But um, the Wolves like just that was the type of defensive performance that the Wolves have been able to stack up against some of these superstar players over the playoffs thus far, and they hadn't yet been able to have one like that against SGA. So to have been able to slow him down as they did, hopefully bodes well for the rest of this series. But I would expect SGA to come with it in the next game. So the Wolves gotta be ready for that. And then again, keep up their technique defensively, as Mr. Steve touched on, not using their offhands to get too touchy, feely, handsy, whatever you want to call it. Just be physical, but don't necessarily do it with your hands by reaching in at the last second.
Yeah, and one thing I did notice as well, and I think I read a little bit about it today, is Ant seemed to match up against SGA on defense a little more than he had in the previous two games. Yeah, how much do you think that had an impact on SGA's off night?
I mean, Ant, when he's locked in, provides a physicality defensively that a lot of the Wolves wings don't have. I mean, as good as Jaden McDaniels is defensively, he relies a lot on his length and his smarts, his athleticism, but he's not particularly a very physical defender. Anthony Edwards is, he's like kind of like a linebacker out there. There aren't many athletes in the NBA like him who have that kind of size, speed, power. I mean, he's not as big as LeBron James, but that's the kind of body types they have. He's shorter, not as thick, but like that type of physicality is something Edwards can bring. And again, when he's locked in, which often when he's on ball, I think is when he's at his best defensively, he can make life hell for opposing wing players. And SGA, I mean, he's never going to be accused of being a strong guy out on the court. And if you're allowed to give him a little bump early and kind of run with him and move with him, and you don't get too handsy, I mean, you can limit some of his effectiveness. And I think it one way, like it's kind of like you have to kind of play the card. Can't play the card too much, but I think Ant sometimes needs that, like, okay, you have to guard the best player on the other team more tonight. That just seems to kind of wake him up, get his like juices flowing a little bit. And so I think that helped set the tone for Ant, but then it allowed Ant to set the tone for the rest of the team with his defensive intensity. So, I mean, good for Ant. And I mean, not only was Alexander not as effective shooting, I mean, he was 4 of 13. Sorry, I said 4 of 14, but he had 4 turnovers. That's kind of unlike him. Still made decent plays for others, 6 assists, but 4 turnovers is a lot for him. So the pressure was on. And again, I think there was a section of the game where he started, I was like, oh, here we go. He's going to start going down for the count. And I think he tried it once on Randall, didn't get a call, and then you didn't see him try it as much after that. So hopefully the next set of refs, allow for this playoff style of basketball. I'm not saying let them get away with murder, but like let them play with some physicality. Don't reward guys who just fall down on their own. So,
And I mean,
Yeah, I think if I can add on to that quick, I think one of the things that Ant did too, and I'll credit Mr. Finch for this because I've been very harsh on Mr. Finch for a while, but they had Ant, if you watch, even when Ant wasn't on SGA, they had him shade, just take that extra step or two away from his guy to shade to cut off that lane from SGA being able to drive on those switches, on the pick and roll. Ant was shading over. So just enough that, SGA couldn't cut, but he wasn't so far that guy was going to get a clean look. I mean, just that subtle adjustment, those extra, step or two to the right or to the left, depending on where SGA was, Ant being able to shade when he was off SGA was really important. That helped to shut down and allow Rudy to be a little bit more in the middle than he was previously. So I think that was a good adjustment that was made.
Yeah, I mean, I think across the board the starters played well. I mean, Rudy and Conley didn't have statistically special games per se, and I think Mike was only 2 of 8 from the field, but he hit 2 3-pointers still early in the game, and that were fairly key. The bench, we've talked about it throughout the playoff run here. The inconsistent performances of Naz, Dante, and Nikhil, and all 3 played well last night. However, we did see something happen that we've been talking about. Mr. Steve has been campaigning for quite a while this season. That was the entry and the emergence of Terrence Shannon Jr. last night. Steve, I'm going to let you talk about that because I'll tell you what, as Wolves fans, we've watched TSJ. We know what he's capable of doing. And a lot of us have been calling for additional playing time, even in this playoff run, as some of the other regulars in Finch's rotation have not been stepped the call. Talk about TSJ, man, because I think a lot of NBA fans that were watching last night really didn't know who he was, and now they do.
TSJ, you got the full TSJ experience last night, and that's why I've been screaming for him for so long, because that kid comes in, he plays with his hair on fire, he attacks the rim, he doesn't care who's out there, he doesn't care who's coming after him, two or three guys, and he's smart enough. Like, you saw him try to attack the rim at one point. The defense dropped to be able to defend the rim, and he took that nice smooth 15-footer right from the free throw line and buried it. I mean, 13 minutes. 15 points, 5 of 8 shooting, 1 for 3 from 3-point line, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. Kid was a plus 11, and he outscored. He was more impactful than SGA last night. I mean, this is what I've been clamoring for. Is TSJ meant necessarily ready for 15, 20 minutes a game? I don't know. I don't work with him all the time, but when you bring him in doses like this, where you get him in for 4 minutes, 5 minutes, you bring him in and bring him in these chunks to just inject that energy and that really punch the other team in the mouth. I like that they brought him in at the start of the second quarter. The team's they're seeing how everybody's all right. They're going to play this way, and you got little adjustments that are going to be made. Well, they weren't really ready for TSJ to come out and just like run straight at them, feet flying, hair on fire, trying to get to the rim. And his defense is good, right? He is a rookie. We saw Luka beat him in the last series with a pump fake and stuff. He is going to have some mistakes like that, but he's sound defensively. He's a willing rebounder. And then you saw in the second half when they brought him back in, not the garbage time, but the actual, like in the third quarter and stuff, where he was fine. You want me to camp out in the corner? Cool. And he's able to go ahead and give it to me. And he's able to be a threat out there, 1 for 3 from 3-point range. But, the fact that he can hit that corner three when they're trying to run everybody else out there, I think is great. I mean, we did that with Andrew Wiggins for how many years, right? Just begging for him, when he'd be standing off in the corner. So TSJ coming out with the energy, with the head of steam that he does, it's such a fastball switch, especially when you got the team starting to slow down. I would have liked to see him come out, more in that, when in previous parts of the series and stuff, when you see the team dragging down and you see him to inject him right there, boom, get him out there, get him flying, change it. He changes the pace. If the team's running slow, throw him out there and get a fastball going. Love it. Keep it going.
Yeah, and I know in the post-game presser, Finch said you're probably going to be seeing more of TSJ, so hopefully he holds true to that. And I think, just to piggyback on what you were talking, Steve, these first two games, I mean, granted, game one, they went into halftime, I believe, with a 4-point lead. Game two was a horrendous ending to the quarter in a game that they were still pretty much in, but instead of being down by maybe 4 at half, they ended up being down at 8. The third quarter has been horrible the first couple of games, and I think Razor, you alluded to it last night. There was a little spell early in the third where they were almost going to let them back in, but I would say TSJ, he's going to be the solver. If you put him into the third quarter, you start getting those lows that we've been accustomed to in this playoff run. But hopefully, Finchie's a man of his word, and we see a lot more TSJ. And he's so versatile. I mean, the minutes you would take from others, I mean, whether it's Conley, Nikhil, maybe even Dante, if you're just taking 2 or 3 minutes from them a game to give to him, and he's even a 10 to 12 minute player, I think you're going to see dividends. All right. Next topic. Let's talk about I'd like to talk about some of the other players on OKC, because I think across the board, the starters, had a rough game. Razor, I know Chet, Jalen Williams, even Dort, who I think has done a good job during these playoffs of defending Ant. They all had rough nights, I guess. What do you attribute that to? Or did they just punch them right in the mouth so quickly that, I mean, not to say OKC gave up, but they never really seemed to threaten to get back into the game after that first quarter?
I think with a guy, we talked about the physicality of the game, the Wolves just force that they played with. That if you're playing with force, if you're playing with physicality, that's not going to typically bode well for a guy like Chet Holmgren. All you got to do is look at him and look at how he's built. And I mean, as excellent as a player as he is, once you get physical, he's not as effective a player. And the other role players, I thought Jalen Williams, like his numbers don't, 3 for 9. It felt like he was playing better than that. It felt like he was getting to his mid-range shot. It felt like, I mean, he was 2 for 5 from 3. He was getting to the line quite a bit, 5 for 6. So, but he also had 4 turnovers. But I mean, Hartenstein, who's had a very nice series, his little float game has been effective. He didn't even start the third quarter. They put in Isaiah Joe instead, if I remember correctly, because I think they wanted to get more 3-point shooting and maybe space the floor a little bit more. Didn't work. Well, it may have started to work early in the third quarter, but credit to our guy Finchie. He called that timeout, and the Wolves got back onto it and got back on them. So, I mean, Dort looked quite frustrated, as I talked about earlier. He's always a very physical defender, but he started doing a little extra. And again, I'm not saying he did it on purpose to Ja Morant in that prior or in the first round series, but um, he's a physical guy, and I started to get a little worried that he might do something a little bit cheap to somebody because he was slapping hands away pretty hard and like just stopped playing, slapping them away, and then shoving Ant. Um, they looked frustrated and they looked completely demoralized, I think, even when they were making that little run. I was scared, don't get me wrong, but they looked like this, they knew this is not our night. And I mean, again, I think that's going to be really important in game 4 that the Wolves come out guns blazing, come out physical, come out attacking on both ends and take it to him. I mean, another guy I want to mention though, Alex Caruso, 1 for 5 from the field, 1 for 3 from three. He's been killing it from three, and his defense has been killing it. But he actually got called for some fouls last night when he's doing his little reach arounds and his reach ins and all his reaches. And he was getting called, and he wasn't happy about it, but he was guilty. And he reportedly, allegedly was getting away with that stuff against an all-time great in the previous series. So it was good to see that he's not getting away with some of the extra that some people argue, and I would agree that OKC defenders get away with. So I think that was one of the big keys to this series, right? It wasn't just how do the superstars perform and had a superstar-like game, but it was about the role players, and the Wolves role players showed up last night with a fury, and then even the unexpected one in Terrence Shannon Jr. and the OKC Thunder. They were very largely ineffective. And again, they say that role players typically play better at home, and so hopefully that continues into Game 4 for the Wolves.
Blog last week or earlier this week because it's still Sunday, I guess. So about Mr. Finch's coaching decisions. I know last year, and in the blog, you talked about the lob game that Dallas used effectively last Western Conference Finals to basically give us the gentleman's sweep. I know going into this series, having watched OKC against Denver, that was a very big concern for me, the lob game and how we got exploited last year. Why? And last night, I think, I forget if it was Chet or Hartenstein, they had a lob early in the game, and I'm like, oh, here we go again. What have the Wolves done different this year to stop the lob game that kicked their asses in last season's Western Conference Finals?
I think one of the things that they've done defensively is when they've gone to zone or when they've gone to off man, they keep Rudy kind of in that drop position and keep him a little bit lower. And, we saw in game 2, the change to how we were running our zone and how, is that then unfortunately, we had a nice gaping hole at about 8-10 feet out, right? That, they were hitting their mid-range shots on. And I think that one of the things that we've done is not only had Rudy in a little bit different drop positions, but we've also had a better attention. And I think we've seen it all season long, is the help side low man coming over. It leaves us a little bit exposed on that corner 3, but we did see a lot more. And we saw this with McDaniels coming in and helping with, cleaning up block shots when, Rudy get put in a bad spot. Naz Reid helping out from time to time and being able to get blocks because of that change that we made, and having that extra guy just lurking off to the side and really being there, cognizant of the pick and roll and what that was going to, kind of what that puts, position that puts Rudy into. And I think, like I talked about a little bit earlier today, or in the call here, the shading that they're doing to help with that now, they made an adjustment. And I was happy to see it, like having Ant shade over, having Na shade over a little bit more, just a step or two over, to shut off that pick and roll, drive capability, because you've got that next level guy there to help out. So I think the other thing that really helps out with that action is the way that we've handled our switches, and we've been a lot more cognizant as to what happens and how we're doing defending the pick and roll. They're not leaving, Rudy on an island as much anymore. You can see that instead of it being like a constant, now it's, you know, a handful of times a game where you're seeing Rudy really stuck on an island by himself, in which he's being asked to guard some of these better players, these better dribblers way out in space. We see that just a handful of times. And to Rudy's credit, he's been a lot better at picking pockets, right? He's been getting a lot more steals when people are like, okay, if you're going to do that, he's getting his hand in there and be able to pick it. So, but I think the biggest things, one, the way that we played low and having that off man, low man be there with Jaden and Nas to be able to help out and assist, guarding the rim. And then I think that the way that we've altered some of our shading, it left us a little bit open on our zone the other day, but you can see that that's one of the things that we've done to try to help recover from some of the lob, pick and roll lob victimhood that we've had in the past.
You just some of Ant's playmaking. So I've noticed, I want to say the last two games, Ant has made a conscious effort to drive the lane, you know, collapse the defense and kick it to Jaden in the corner. And I believe last night I think they did that play like 4 or 5 times. And I believe Jaden was hit 2 of 4 or 2 of 5 or whatever. Talk a little bit about Ant's playmaking ability and his maturation playoffs as opposed to last season, because he did run out of energy, admittedly so, in last year's Western Conference Finals. I don't think that's a problem this year.
I kind of lost you there. Is this one for me, Mike? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. I didn't hear you for a moment there, but Anthony Edwards playmaking, I mean, that's one of the biggest steps he's taken this year. I think most of the talk is about his three-point shooting, not only increased volume, but his increased efficiency. But he seems now to be able to figure out defenses a lot sooner. It didn't look good in game one, but game two, despite the loss, I think he had what, 0 turnovers or just 1 turnover and a lot of assists. The only reason he didn't have, you could argue he didn't have a great game, was just his three-point shot wasn't falling. I'm gonna give credit to a friend, Paul from New Hope, made this point to me that he believes that Anthony Edwards has possibly solved the OKC defense. And a lot of it is what you're talking about, in that he's driving to the lane, but it's not always like, I felt like last year, prior years, he would drive to the lane with the intent of going up, and then if he got caught in a bad spot, he'd kick out to an open shooter, right? Now it actually looks like he's driving with the intent of, I'm going to manipulate the defense the way I want it to, and then I'm going to find that open shooter like Jalen Mc, Jaden McDaniels in the corner. Sorry about that, Jaden. But he seems like more of his drives are about manipulating the defense to get them to react to him so he can find a lob threat, he can find a kick out. And it just looks like more of what he's doing in terms of playmaking isn't a reaction to what the defense is doing. It's more of, I'm going to make you react to me. And if I think you're going to do what I think you're going to do, like the help's going to come from here. I know where this guy's going to be open. And it just seems like he has a much better understanding of how defense is trying to attack him, and then how he can proactively attack that defense and create opportunities for others. Again, it's just not as reactive. It's more of like, hey, I know what you're trying to do, but I'm going to make you bend to me. And I mean, yes, he had 4 turnovers last night, but I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, he was finding Jaden McDaniels in that corner over and over again. And I feel like he'd been doing that all season a little bit better. And so credit to Anthony Edwards. I mean, I think we got to remember, I think I have to remind myself of this every couple weeks, is that the dude's only 23. SGA is, it doesn't seem like a lot. He's 26, but 3 years in the NBA is a long time, and it is a lot of time to learn. It's a lot of time to understand defenses, to understand your teammates, whatever it might be. And like, for him to see him kind of getting the intellectual side of the game down, it's pretty amazing to witness. So hopefully the Wolves players, the other guys, can continue to hit some open shots. And I wouldn't expect them to hit at the same clip as they did last night. But if they can just hit like a solid amount of threes, the Wolves have a chance every night. So
And my apologies to the viewers and to you too, because I have on right now. The missus is Netflix and chill, and the kids playing video games. I've got the twins on two TVs here, so I think the audio losses and the skips are a result of me using 5 different devices. But thank you to the good folks at SCI Broadband for my fiber service up here. It has worked pretty well, but it does have some limitations when you're using it. I'm going to close out with one last question for you. Obviously, I don't think anybody here, even us, is staunch homers tomorrow night and kick their ass by 40 like they did last night. I think that's the exception, not the rule. What response do you see OKC having tomorrow night? Because I have to have I'm of the belief that they are probably pretty pissed off today. I think Razor, you alluded to it. I did see the mic'd up stuff with Shea, and I mean the interesting thing is he understood what was going on and was talking about it to the other players. I think you're going to see a much different OKC team tomorrow night.
I think one of the things that we're going to see is we're going to see their energy come up. I think they got thoroughly embarrassed, and so I think they're going to come out flying. I think we're going to see a lot more press or 3/4 court pickup to try to disrupt us and keep us from getting out of a flow, getting into our flow here. And you're going to really see them push the pace. I think the first thing you're going to see them do is really try to get that ball down the court as fast as possible on offense to try to steal as many points as they can. I think their energy and their pace is going to be a lot different. I don't know that there's much different that they're going to do offensively. Because when we play man-to-man or we play off-ball man-to-man, we're one of the toughest teams in the NBA. And I don't know that there's much you can do about that, from a schematic standpoint that they're going to be able to make in just a day's time. But I think the energy and the pace is what you're going to see them definitely do. And I think you're going to see them probably dare us to shoot a little bit more from the outside again. Like, okay, prove it. You hit 50% from 3. Great. Do it again, right? You got to do it twice in a row. So I think that they're going to continue to try to close that lane down. We'll see that come out. I think, I don't think they're going to be as deep. I think they're going to come out to about the free throw line and really try to pack, all around in there. But their pace and their energy is what's going to come up. I would expect to see them pick us up at like 3/4 court at least to try to force us on a rhythm, force us out of the ability to race up and down the court. They're not going to let a rookie come back at us like this. So I don't think they're going to allow TSJ just to sprint down the court with, and hardly any resistance. So the defensive energy is what they're going to bring, and they're going to pick us up right away.
Fortunately, some of us will be in attendance tomorrow. I'm going to have to look around. Razor will be there along with his sister. Myself, I will be there with my son. So looking forward to getting back out there. I did tell Mitchell before last night's game, I'm like, if we win, yes, we will go Monday. I don't know that I would have wanted to go ahead. They went down.
yeah,
Hoping to get the Man Cave crew together tomorrow and do a pre-game preview show. So we'll have to see what that looks like. Razor, I'm gonna have to check and see that some of the places we would do that at, i.e. Surly is even open tomorrow with it being a holiday. But I will be in touch with the rest of the men of the Man Cave and try to figure out a way to deliver a pregame tomorrow evening. And hopefully maybe even grab some food and beer like we are known to do, Mr. Razor, prior to
yes,
games.
sir. Yes, sir. I look forward to it.
All right. Well, that is a wrap for the Game 3 recap. Dare to say Wolves back. We have a series. I think even the NBA fans that don't necessarily have a horse in this race are probably happy to see the series extended. And fortunately tonight, or unfortunately, if you're a Knicks fan, they got to go to Indiana, and they find themselves in an 0-2 hole. It's gonna be rough. And hey, we know the feeling. That was us last year against the Mavericks. So I just want to see a good series in the East. Obviously, I think we've talked openly here. I think we're all rooting for the Knicks and Cat because Cat was one of us. But hopefully we get a good game tonight. And then tomorrow night we will be back to talk about the Wolves and hopefully an evening of that series. So appreciate everybody watching. Gentlemen, I appreciate you being here on a busy holiday